Hey everybody, welcome back to the road to Avengers Doomsday, and today's film is Spider-Man 2. It's been rough. The last couple of notes have been tough because we had to look at Hulk and the Punisher, which were not Marvel's stronger efforts. They were kind of weird experiments that didn't quite land, but now we're back in solid territory. Spider-Man, my favorite, and a movie that honestly I will have very little to say negative about because this is probably still to this day one of my favorite, if not my all-time top Marvel movie, superhero movie, Spider-Man movie that's ever been made, because it's just awesome. Like, there's just no other word to describe it. It's awesome. It's perfection. Let's get the negative out the way at the beginning. Let's just sum up what we're talking about, and then we'll get into the negative, because there's not a lot, and then I'll gush for probably like 10 minutes. It won't be a very long one, because there's only positive things mostly to say. So yeah, continuing off of where we left off with Spider-Man, moving forward, the most logical thing to do was to sort of talk about like how being Spider-Man is now messing up Peter Parker's life. He's got all these responsibilities. He's got a job that he can't get to. He's got school that he can't focus on. He's got his relationship with Harry Osborn that's suffering because of the obvious connection with Spider-Man, taking pictures of him for the Bugle, and his unrequited love for Mary Jane. His aunt's in a house that's almost for foreclosure, and he's still hiding the fact of what happened with Uncle Ben from her. And of course, on top of all that, there's a new villain, Doc Ock, Dr. Octopus. And Peter has to weigh up his options of whether he should still be Spider-Man or give it up to live a normal life and try to go after Mary Jane. The negative, let's just get that out of the way because there's not a whole lot of it. Let's think. Something negative about Spider-Man 2. This is gonna be tricky. This is gonna be a tricky one. Something negative about Spider-Man 2. This is hard. This is very hard. It isn't longer. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I know I'm supposed to like say something negative to accentuate the positive kind of a thing here. Like, every movie has something you can work on. You know, you can always be better. But I guess the one negative thing would be that Mary Jane is a plot device again who needs to be rescued, and she screams too much. Other than that, that's about it. That's all I can really complain about. It's the same thing. She gets kidnapped by the villain at the end, and Peter's got to go save her, blah, blah, blah. But it's better this time because the ending is awesome because he takes off the mask and she finds out he's Peter, and there's an awesome little resolution to that. And so it's okay. But I still think the beat of her getting kidnapped is... And then people were making fun of it before and after even this movie came out. After 2 had come out, there was a lot of things online about her being a plot device that just gets kidnapped, and then, you know, Peter saves her, and then the movie ends, and that's the end of it. So that's about all I can really argue with. Everything else is great. Like, the music, Danny Elfman outdid it with the score, you know, bringing back the old themes and stuff, and then coming up with a new theme for Doc Ock was great. Doc Ock's a great new villain. A different spin on the scientist gone supervillain trope that we saw in the last movie. Obviously, Norman Osborn was sort of evil at heart, and the Goblin was kind of playing off of his insecurities and stuff, versus Doc Ock, which is like he's actually just a cool normal guy, and these tentacles, this AI stuff in the tentacles is what's making him evil, essentially. That's taking over his mind and making him sort of go down this criminal path, especially after he loses his experiment, he loses his wife, and just setting him up as like this really tragic villain versus, okay, he's just the guy who wants to take over the world, he's just the guy who wants to, you know, destroy Spider-Man kind of a thing. And it was an interesting spin on the character. You know, he's been in different versions of the comics and stuff. Sometimes he's just a megalomaniac. Sometimes he's, you know, a scientist who's belittled by the community. You know, so this was an interesting spin on making him more of a family man, making him warmer than Norman had been in the first movie, making him more connected to Peter, in more of a, I guess, less creepy way than Norman was, because Norman kind of felt like he was ignoring his own son, versus this where it feels like, okay, well, he doesn't have kids, so obviously he can look at Peter as a father figure type thing, and it doesn't feel as strange or as foreign because you know that Harry's there. Harry doesn't have a lot to do in this movie other than basically be drunk and go after Spider-Man kind of a deal, but even his stuff at the end that ties in with Doc Ock, and then his reveal at the end when he realizes who Peter is and he takes off the mask, which was a huge thing that everybody was excited for when the movie came out, you know, what Harry was going to do when he took the mask off. And then that's basically all just big tease for Spider-Man 3, which I won't. So maybe I'll throw that in the negative. The negative, I will say that one of the negative things about Spider-Man 2, there was a lot of positive stuff about where they were going to go with Spider-Man 3, and it didn't quite live up to that legacy of hope. But, you know, we had it while we there was a solid 3 years there where it was hope. Hope was eternal and didn't quite land, but we'll talk about that when we get to Spider-Man 3. Again, I have to talk about Spider-Man 3. Oh boy. But like I said, great villain in Doc Ock, and just a great story for Peter. The next logical step of dealing with the responsibilities of being Spider-Man and doing the Spider-Man No More comic. Where Peter gives up being Spider-Man. A great recreation of that comics panel where he throws the suit out in the garbage. And then just him living life as Peter Parker and not as Spider-Man. It just felt like the right thing to do, the next bit of the story. And in some ways it was nice. I don't know if it was intentional to throw back to, but a great throwback to Superman 2, which is basically a similar story where the hero is in love with the girl and gives up his powers to live a normal human life and then realizes that there's a bigger threat and needs to come back. And Superman 2 is one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. So if you're going to pull from that, perfect. And Peter's thing mirrors it so well because rather than it just be like a decision in the heat of the moment that you could say, well, Superman just wanted to, have a relationship with Lois, blah, blah, blah. But in this, Peter's got like a million things wrong with his life. Like he can't hold down a job. He can't go to school. He can't focus. He's losing his powers because he can't focus on all this stuff. It just fit better, I think, with Peter too. Even than as it did with Superman in that movie. But that was a great thing to put Peter through for this movie and to really focus on and give him like another choice of, what it means to be Spider-Man. And then you get great scenes like where he rescues the little girl from the fire as Peter Parker, and then he tries to come back as Spider-Man. And then, of course, taking responsibility for Uncle Ben's death a little bit by explaining what happened to Aunt May, which was, I thought, I didn't think they were ever really going to do that because I don't think in the comics that ever really comes up that Peter tells her close to what happened, minus the Spider-Man stuff. So I've always thought that scene was really good. And then her, the Aunt May speeches of being the Aunt May speeches, Rosemary Harris, just amazing at giving that sort of sagely, grandmotherly advice kind of a thing, which makes her so perfect as Aunt May in a lot of ways. I know people argue about Aunt May, but really she is, if you've read like the early Spider-Man comics, she's picture perfect what was written in those comics of how Aunt May was, trying to do her own thing, but constantly worrying about Peter in every issue and making sure he was okay and just wanting the best for him no matter what. And that's what Sam Raimi, I think, really pulled from. I think that particular version of Aunt May. I don't necessarily think we always have to make Aunt May old, but if we are going to go that direction with it, I think they nailed this perfectly. And then, of course, you get Uncle Ben back. Cliff Robertson came back for a little quick cameo in the scene in the car, which I thought was really nice, a nice throwback. Sort of makes you think, well, this is what Peter's always sort of talking to him, Uncle Ben, whenever he's having these thoughts about his life falling to pieces. And then it's just a fun movie. There's so many fun bits. There's so many funny lines. The stuff with the rent guy. I mean, those things have become memes in and of itself. But they were funny even before the internet was memeing this shit. It was always fun. Rent, like everybody was laughing at that stuff. There is the extended version, which I have seen. It adds 8 minutes. It's okay. It adds like a couple little extra fight scenes here and there that Doc Ock fights on the side of the building in the train. Probably the biggest one that I like is J. Jonah Jameson wearing the Spider-Man suit. Usually when this is on TV nowadays, you can sometimes usually watch it. It's only got 8 extra minutes. So honestly, I don't know why they chopped it. The only scene out of the 8-minute thing that I would have chopped out is the elevator scene. The elevator scene with the guy when Peter can't get down the building, so he takes the elevator. It just goes on for too long. And it's just kind of not... It's kind of like ad-lib jokes they're trying to do, and it doesn't land, versus the more conciseness of, okay, they go into the elevator, it's an awkward elevator, he says the funny thing about the suit, scene ends. That's all you needed. You didn't need to drag it longer than that. That's the only scene from the 8-minute thing that I think is kind of a waste. Other than that, I think the rest of it is really good, and I wish they would reinsert those scenes in. Hopefully, I don't know if they do when they re-air the movie in theaters and stuff. They should, because honestly, a lot of those extra 8 minutes, aside from the elevator thing, kind of worth it, honestly. But I love that. I love like the little jokes, like Peter at the planetarium party, he can't get the drink, he can't get the food, he's got no luck. Him delivering the pizzas and the thing in the closet. Like, there's just so much like little things that they threw in there that just add to it, I think, and just add to Peter Parker's bad luck stuff and really sell you on it. And then Tobey Maguire obviously selling you on the whole thing because he's really great, as Peter, and he's coming more into his own. Again, I guess like the one negative, if I have to throw a negative in there, this was something more from the original, was that he isn't very quippy the way he is in the comics. He's very quiet compared to that. He doesn't make a lot of heavy jokes, and there's definitely less of that here actually than there was in the first movie. And something that I just particularly felt like with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, he wasn't that version of the character. I just felt like his Spider-Man is more reserved, and he's more down to do cool Spider-Man things and superhero things, and he's a little bit more serious. Maybe they didn't want to make him like too much of a joke, and that's why they kind of leaned back off of it. Because I think Tobey Maguire could handle it, because in the video games, they let him say a lot of quips and lines, and he does pretty good with it. But the films always kind of pulled that back. Maybe also because of his age, because technically in the comics, Peter's a teenager and a young adult kind of a thing. And Tobey Maguire obviously is a full-blown adult. Like, he's in his 20s at this point, almost 30 probably, if I had to guess. And so maybe they just don't expect a 30-year-old to quip around like that, so they just decided not to do it. It's a disappointing thing, and obviously if you're a fan of that from the character, it's kind of sad, but everything else was like spot on again, and he just nails it perfectly. And then Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. I mean, this really blew up Molina's career. Up until this point, the only movie I had seen Alfred Molina in, and I still think it's one of his greatest movies, and he probably doesn't remember he was probably even in it, and I wonder if he does. I'd be surprised. But if I ever meet the man at anything in the future, I will always say that his first movie that I loved him in was, because what I used to do is when I knew actors were being cast in movies, I would go back and try to look at their previous movies to get a view of what they were like, to see like how maybe they could, if they fit my imagination of the character. So I remember Alfred Molina had been cast, and I didn't know who he was, and I heard he'd been in a movie, and it was in a movie called Dudley Do-Right. And if you've ever seen Dudley Do-Right, it is one of the worst movies out there, and I love it because it's got Brendan Fraser and Alfred Molina in it, and it's based on this old cartoon show from way back in the day. And Alfred Molina plays this character called Snidely Whiplash, and he's basically this old, ancient cartoon villain who ties women to railroad tracks. He's that kind of villain, and he's got this like uptight voice thing. He's got his British voice going a little bit, and he's just hilarious. It's a terrible movie. It's a really short movie, and it's really bad. But Brendan Fraser and Alfred Molina sell you on it because they're just really good as the characters. The plot, it makes no sense, and it's completely garbage, but they're hysterical. And Molina just sold me on that. And when I realized he was in that, I'm like, yeah, I couldn't see it at all, but I was like, yeah, what the hell? I'll give him a shot as Doc Ock. Let's see what happens. And then, he does this, and it was night and day. And this really blew up his career. Like, after this, he was in everything, under the sun, and he became so popular, which was great, because Alfred Molina, he's a gem. I think in every movie he's been in, I love Alfred Molina. I don't think there's a single movie I've seen in him that I hated. I think any movie I've seen with him, even if I didn't like the movie overall, I'd probably have come away with it by saying, Alfred Molina was in it, and he was great. That's my 2 cents. Kirsten Dunst, again, she's doing her best. I always think she's fine as Mary Jane. I like the wig they gave her, or I think this time they just sort of dyed her hair light red. They didn't do the wig from the last time. I kind of missed the red wig, because I feel like that's more of the comic thing. The character in the comic had the bright red hair. But it's not a big deal. I just feel bad that she can only do the screaming thing. Like, because it's like Kirsten Dunst can do, other things. She's been in other movies, Bring It On. She'd been in Jumanji as a little girl. She'd been in other movies in between all that stuff. But I think she has the acting ability. I don't think she's like one of those actresses who's just there to be a pretty face. And all they did was make her scream. And I just feel like, you could have done maybe a little more. And again, I was hoping that there'd be more now that she didn't have to be, the rescued damsel in distress anymore, that she knew Peter's secret. But again, we'll get to that when we get to it. And then James Franco doing his best as Harry Osborn. Not a lot to milk into this time, obviously, with Green Goblin not being in the movie. But the setup for his turn into Green Goblin was pretty cool. And I wasn't really too concerned about that. I mean, him wearing the costume, I was expecting it, because in the comics he does, and in the TV show he'd done it, the cartoon show, and I was like, cool, bring it on. I guess the only thing I was kind of disappointed about, maybe, and this is really a negative disappointment, is that they keep killing the villains off. They killed Green Goblin, and they killed Doc Ock, and I was like, oh man, we can't have no more fun with these characters. They can't go to jail or something. And it's like, and I think it's because my father jinxed it. I think I remember we went to go see the first Spider-Man movie, and I still remember to this day getting in the car, and we were talking about, like, will they make more of the movies? And I said, well, probably. I mean, because he's going to kill the Green Goblin in this movie. I mean, he's going to have to get rid of him. And my father was like, well, Spider-Man doesn't kill people. Spider-Man just, arrests them. He brings them to jail. And I was like, I guess. I was like, in the cartoon show, yeah, I guess he did that. But then when the Green Goblin died in the movie, I remember telling my father in the car ride home, I'm like, well, I guess the Green Goblin's not going to be in Spider-Man 2 because he dead. Which that one actually was from the comics. He did impale himself on the glider. So that one's actually from the comics. But then through, weirdness and craziness and clones, there was, he was back. But whatever. And then in the second movie, Doc Ock died, and I was like, see, another one dead. And my father was probably like, oh, damn, why did I say that to him? But overall, I think Spider-Man 2 is just perfect. It's just so perfect. Like, the action scenes are great. It just builds upon everything. You start off with like this, and it starts off great too. Like as a secret movie, like it doesn't start like with a big action scene of him saving the day, but it's him doing his Peter Parker thing, trying to get his job together, using Spider-Man to kind of help out, but he's also going to stop and be Spider-Man, you know, saving some kids crossing the street. It's a small little thing, but it gives you the effect. And boom, you know, we quickly get back into it rather than this big drawn-out thing or waiting for something to happen or things that don't make sense. I mean, I know it seems weird now, but eventually we're going to get to a few Marvel movies where it feels like the sequel Marvel movies that we're getting don't take advantage of the fact that you don't have to slow ball into the superhero thing again. You can go full tilt into it, like, you know, boom, we can get right into the action right at the beginning because we've already formed the team, we've already got the powers, we've already got the suit, we're ready to go. You know, get in there. You know, that's the end of it. And we really haven't had that because Spider-Man 2 is really, aside from X-Men 2, is really the first solo outing we've gotten, you know, aside from Blade. And Blade, I kind of feel Blade 2 is kind of like a retcon movie where it doesn't necessarily fall back completely, but it does do the same thing, and in a good way, it goes straight into the action, which it knows that that's what you came for. So there you go. But we'll see in a future Marvel movie how that doesn't happen. I won't spoil which one it is right now, but maybe you can guess. But I think that's really great. And then, you know, it just builds up from there. He does the guys stealing the car. And then we get sequences like, you know, what was it? The thing when Doc Ock's machine goes critical. And then later at the bank. And then we get, you know, Peter going into the building on his own. And then, of course, the whole ending thing with the train. The train scene was, like, iconic. Like, to this day, I think it's, like, the number one sequence in a comic book movie because it just feels like something from a comic book that you would read with Spider-Man and Doc Ock. Like they'd be fighting on a train and doing it, and it's a scene that they've referenced, and it's been like iconic in games with Spider-Man and future cartoon shows. Like there's something about that scene that just really resonates, you know. And then everybody's saving him, and I always thought that was kind of funny. I know a lot of people, I didn't mention this in the last review of Spider-Man, a lot of people were annoyed with the bridge sequence at the end of Spider-Man 1 where the people on the bridge throw things at the Green Goblin and stop him from killing Spider-Man, which I always liked, but a lot of people hated it because I don't know, they said it didn't make sense or they felt it was stupid. It was really thrown in there because of like, I think it was like post 9/11 stuff, where like a lot of movies were trying and a lot of media things were trying to like keep up morale by making it seem like we were all together. So like in the face of adversity, you know, especially because the movie's set in New York, you know, New Yorkers would come together to take on something. I don't really think it's a bad thing to do. I think it makes perfect sense. You know, obviously in the form of the movie, they love Spider-Man. These guys support Spider-Man, so help them. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So the part in this movie where they kind of do the same thing where the people on the train are like, yeah, you wanna get to Spider-Man, you gotta get through me. And then Doc Ock just goes, okay. And he just throws his arms out and separates them. I thought that was kind of a funny little twist on it. It was like, okay, they're trying to do the scene from the last movie where like the people help Spider-Man, and it's like, well, not this time. This time it ain't gonna work. But scenes like that are great. And also, we really should talk about the visual effects. So the visual effects in the first movie, like I said, I loved the stuff with the Green Goblin when it was practical. Like you could see it was, you know, whether it was Willem Dafoe or it was a stunt guy on the prop, and you know they've got him on like a dolly, and you can see the glider and stuff. But obviously that's a way more CGI heavy thing because it has to fly and stuff. But with Doc Ock, it very easily could have been something that was fully CGI'd, and they chose to go mixed. They chose to do puppets and CGI. So basically every time he's in like wide shots where it's hard to hide like the puppeteers who would move the arms and stuff, it's CGI. When he's on buildings, obviously that's all CGI. And then obviously there's certain parts where you can tell Alfred Molina is CGI because he's not wearing a mask like the Green Goblin did. So you can tell, and it's a little dated. You can sometimes tell it's a CGI. It's not really him. But they do the same thing from the first movie where like they intersplice it with real shots of Alfred Molina interacting with things, and so it looks really good. But the tentacles, for the most part, in the close-up shots, in anything that's like with Alfred Molina being real, it's puppets. It's a guy. They had people holding the tentacles, holding them around, maneuvering them, opening them up, making the motions, and it's just really cool because I feel like if they'd gone full CGI and it was Alfred Molina staring at a tennis ball, I don't think the tentacles would be as impactful as a character in the movie or as a visual effect in the movie. And they wouldn't have the presence that they have. You know, the part where they attack in the hospital and Sam Raimi gets to do his horror and his Evil Dead reference with the little mini chainsaw, that was kind of fun. You know, that's all practical for the most part. I think, except for maybe the part where they're the wide shot where they're all getting thrown around. But like the close-up shots of them all being attacked, that's practical like puppetry. And that's really cool how they were able to do it. And nowadays I feel like they would just throw CGI on it and call it a day. Especially if we jump ahead to when Alfred Molina will show up again in these reviews. I'm pretty sure that was all CGI. They didn't do tentacle. CGI's come a long way since Spider-Man 2, obviously, so you probably can do it now better than you could have in 2004. But there's something about the practical effect that I really, really enjoyed, and I thought it was cool to see like a physical effect with that. Also, side note, just to throw it out there, Sam Raimi was ahead of the game years ago, setting up his future references to other Marvel characters. Apparently, he's a big fan of them, so there's a reference to Doctor Strange, who I didn't even know was a character. Really, I think I remember seeing him in the cartoon show, but I didn't know his name was Doctor Strange. And ironically, Sam Raimi will come back to Marvel after Spider-Man 3 in directing a Doctor Strange movie, which I find is full circle. Also, it means that Doctor Strange exists in Tobey's universe, so that's kind of funny too, and that's the movie he'll show back up in again. So I always thought that was kind of a funny little reference, and it was probably the closest we'd gotten, and definitely the closest in all the movies so far that we've watched, where there has been like a definitive name drop of another hero, even if it's not like a confirmed effect that it's another hero and it's not just a comic book guy, because they never make it clear whether it's Doctor Strange is a real character or he's fake or what. They just say the name's taken. But like I've been saying, this is, I know I went on a little longer than I probably should have, but there's just so much good to talk about in this movie. Stuff that I probably can't even remember right now off the top of my head, but I'll remember after I finish the note, basically, which is that, I just love it. I just love Spider-Man 2. I think it's great. I think it's so much better than, not that the first movie's bad, but it's exactly what your sequel should do. Bigger action, more memorable action, bigger effects, bigger villain, better, enhancements with the storyline. And there was, like I said, there was so much potential in what was going to happen with Spider-Man 3. Like, everybody was super excited, like, where this was going. Like, now Peter and MJ are together. Harry knows about the Green Goblin. He wants to get revenge on Peter. Like, what's going to happen? Who's the villain going to be? And then, of course, the lovely Sony, who, I love for all their decisions that they make with my boy Spidey, had to step in and do some stupid shit and kind of ruin everything. But again, that's a story for another day. So should you watch Spider-Man 2? Hell friggin' yeah. Like, there's no reason not to. Even if you, again, like, if you didn't like Spider-Man 1, maybe you're probably gonna like Spider-Man 2 a lot more. But this is just a great movie. Regardless, I think this is one of those movies where even if you don't like superhero films, I think you'll probably like this. Or if you're not really into all the superhero movies and you just like Spider-Man kind of films, you think the story in Spider-Man's good, this is great, because I think again, it's another relatable story where you feel like, we're not all Spider-Man, but we all have lives where things are busy, where we have to deal with responsibilities, where we can't make promises to people and we have to kind of choose what we want to do, and how we want to be. And Peter's just got it 6 times worse because he's a superhero. I think that's just so relatable. He's in love with this girl that he can't be with. And I think that's what makes Spider-Man such an iconic character, and why he's lasted why he's lasted as long as he has, and why popularity has always been as strong as it's been, because he just relates to everybody, no matter what age it is. And Spider-Man 2 just, I think, is more proof of that, where the character just is awesome, and he's in a movie that's as worthy as his character deserves. So yeah, give it a watch. Definitely watch it. And thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys on the next note.